Radhe Khosed, and you are watching The Coffee Table. And today, as always, we have a wonderful show lined up for you today. And one might say that we obsess a little bit about parenting, but we're only doing it because we love our children. And you don't have to be a parent. You can just be anybody who interacts with a child to benefit from these conversations that we have on the coffee table. And I know that culturally we pride ourselves on being so family-minded and family-oriented. We love our kids. But the thing is that the world is changing, and the way that we were raised and the way that our parents were raised was very much in keeping with the times that we were growing up in. And I think that we can all agree that the times that our children now are facing are unprecedented in so many ways. Like, even if you just look at the barest minimum, we didn't have to live through a global pandemic when we were 10, 8 or 10, but so many children do now. And the way that we deal with the world and the way that we raise our children are very interconnected. And what we essentially, I suppose, want to be doing is raising resilient children who have, a really solid self-esteem, who are kind, who are empathetic, who can go out into the world positively and be a force for change and be, when we talk about children being a credit to you, these are the things that we think about, really. I think nobody actively or consciously wants to raise a terrible child. I feel like I could say this because I have many children. So in order to have this conversation, I'm so excited to be welcoming on the show Mavish and Faizan Ahmed. I'm sure that so many of you know Mavish from her wonderful blog, Safarname, on Instagram. She's a digital creator and an advocate of positive parenting, and is really trying through her digital platform in so many wonderful ways to really change the conversation around how Desis parent and the different kind of ways and different innovations and just the different approaches that we can take to parenting. And she's been having these wonderful conversations on Safarname with her partner Faizan, who is an HR professional, a wonderful photographer, and the couple is currently based in Rotterdam. Well, of course, but our Lahore is in the hearts, always. And we are also joined by Mariam Sohail, who is a marriage and family therapist and a Fulbright scholar based in Lahore. And that's a very brief bio, but you should not be fooled because she is a woman of great, deep wisdom. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm so excited. This is wonderful. So, Mariam, if we could maybe start with you. So when we talk about positive parenting, then what do we really mean? Like, what is this approach to how we interact with our kids?
So I think generally every 10 years, there's a new term that comes up with respect to parenting.
Yeah.
Okay, and you'll be seeing those terms trending in this positive parenting.
Phrase.
Yeah, exactly. So I would suggest that before you get into the suffix or the prefix, let's just start to understand parenting, right?
Yes.
Because those things will continue to change as we go along.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
There's more research that comes in the market, and some of those researchers, by the way, are just funded. So, you want to be mindful of what you
need to keep up with it.
Yeah, like how a specific brand of milk is used by good parents, and it has all those nutrients, and so a lot of those things are also funded.
Absolutely. And also, like, this is something we can talk about as we go along, is that there's just so much anxiety around parenting. And again, this is probably a bit of a tangent, but I do want to get into it, is that, do you feel that over time, maybe our generation, who are in our 30s and perhaps early 40s, are more anxious about the way that we are raising our children? Do you feel like there's a generational difference here as well? And again, based on how you said, theories are evolving, strategies are evolving, ideas are evolving. So it's a sort of continuous journey of kind of knowledge.
Right. Absolutely. So I think it's a good thing that there's a generational difference.
Yeah.
That means that we are evolving as a society also.
Yeah.
And for good or for bad, we're learning, right? So I think as a whole, it's a good thing. And there is a difference. There is anxiety. I don't think, and anxiety sometimes can be used for growth. You are uncomfortable with what is happening. You're taking feedback that, okay, what I'm doing is not working.
Yeah.
With my kids, with the system that I'm placed in. this is not working. So what should I be doing? Then you go out and you start looking for more resources, more ideas, more paradigms as to how you should be interacting with your kids, right? So I think that's what a lot of like people in their 30s and 40s, they come across anxious around parenting because they're really looking for what would work. Some of the things that they were faced with did not work. And in your introduction, you were saying that, you know, it is a good conversation for everybody to have, even if they're not a parent.
Yes.
Because you're not a parent, but you're somebody's child, right?
Yes.
So there's no way you can get rid of the parental dynamic. So I know
that's
me and my
really
colleague
cool. No, that's actually really cool. Think about it also. And I think that a lot of like modern therapy, also there's also a lot of inner child work. So in a way, you kind of have to understand how you were parented in order to understand things about yourself also.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, me and my very dear colleague and a friend, Umar Tosi, if you've been, you know, he's been here on this show as well.
Yes.
We conducted a lot of parenting workshops across the country.
Yeah.
Right? And those were for everybody, 18 and above.
Yeah.
They didn't have to be parents because in order for you to understand parenting, you need to know how you were parented. So it was a great experience, and you know, everybody learned from that. And I think it's a good conversation to have for everyone at this point.
And that's something that I want to cycle back, because I think it's a concept that a lot of us aren't familiar with. This is, what do you mean, like inner child, parent yourself? Well, like, why should you understand how you were parented? It's done now, you know, sort of what happened it's happened. You know, I like to say in Urdu, you know, raat gayi, baat gayi. But before we sort of come to that, hi Mavish, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hello. Welcome to the show once more. It's so nice to have you, albeit from sort of a distance, a safe distance. So Mavish, I know that via Safarname, which is this wonderful community space for women, and I know that you're very particular about not having men interact in that space, and it's really beautifully done. There are a lot of, and I know that a lot of the sort of a lot of conversations that happen in, of course, female communities, a lot of them do revolve around how one parents and a lot of questions that come up. So what are sort of some questions or some general concerns that you have encountered very commonly about parenting on Safarname?
I think when I started, I never thought that this is going to be the goal of my blog.
Yeah.
But as you know, post and I would share my life and the feedback I would get from my audience, I would be able to gauge, okay, this is that interests people. This is something that, you know, people find what they want to talk about. So every time I would discuss my relationship with my elder one, because when I started, my younger one was just 2 months.
Yeah.
You know, people would come back and say, oh, this is such a fresh perspective. And which is why I keep bringing in, you know, every time there's a new learning. Every time I have a conversation with my older one, I need to bring it to my space, to the audience, and together we can learn and discuss and converse. So I think that one thing that I was doing very unconsciously, but my audience has told me that it's a good thing, and now I do it very consciously, is communication. I think that when I won't complain because my parents did the best given the times, you know.
Of course.
But I think that while I was growing up, a lot of focus was on we are right because we are parents and we know the best for you.
Yeah.
You have to do this because saying so, no questions asked. And this is something that I want to do differently with my daughter, that even at the end of the day, she ends up doing what I say. It needs to be a conversation. She needs to feel that she was heard, whatever her points were came to me. And together we can come up with a balanced situation in which, you know, something incorporate comes from her mind, but then she also understands where is coming from. So we come to something that is,
so
you know, of course, if there's a situation, and if something is completely like, no, this cannot happen because it would prove to be dangerous for her, obviously I have to be the parent and authority over there. But if it's something, a daily thing that we're doing, it's nice to involve her, and we build trust in each other, and I think she appreciates that she can come and tell us that, no, Mama, this wasn't right, or you didn't say the right thing, and I apologize. There's nothing wrong in a parent also being wrong and apologizing. If this
and it's really interesting that, when you and I are talking about it, and it sounds so logical and it sounds intuitive and it sounds really sort of lovely, and also something that doesn't seem particularly difficult. But it's interesting that so many people responded in almost a kind of surprised way that, oh wow, like this is possible, like this is an approach that you can take, and you can. And this nature of conversation and the fact that you can have like this mutual respect between a parent and a child, where you can still be in control and in charge of everything, of course, because you are the parent, but there is an element of wanting to reach out and explain where you're coming from, and your child understanding that. And I'm really glad that you brought up trust, because Mariam, do you feel like you see this in your own practice as well, where parents struggle to have that kind of open and honest communication with their children? And I'm sure parents all over the world struggle with this, but I think that maybe particularly in Pakistan, do you feel like it's also true that we've inherited a certain kind of really almost rigid sense of duty to one's family and the role of a parent, with like a capital R and a capital P, that this is what a parent has to be. And that's not really working for modern kids now.
Yeah, I don't think it is working for them. So the set of people that I work with, there are two kind of sets that I work with. Where there's an adult child who's coming in with an older parent. So somebody in their 20s coming in with somebody in their 50s, right?
Right.
And then I work with a set where there's an adult coming with a minor. And there is a stark difference between those two sets. And as you were mentioning, like the older set of parents, where the parent is older, would definitely have that difficulty communicating because it was never established in the growing years, in the formative years of the parent-child relationship. Right? And that's where therapeutic intervention is required, because that bridge was never built. So through therapy, in therapy, that is what they're trying to establish.
Right.
That kind of open, honest communication.
Right.
So on the other hand, the other set of parent-child relationship that we very commonly work with is like, a parent who's bringing in a minor because of behavioral issues or academic issues or any of those, signs that they're picking up. And then it turns out that a lot of that is kind of embedded in the family system or the relationship that exists, right? In that, I don't think communication is so much of an issue. There's so many other things like parents kind of putting their anxiety onto the children and all those kind of things, like family dynamic, the system the kids are placed in. Because now I think a lot of kids are a lot more sensitized and vocal about it than probably our generation or the generation before us. Like they will know that I'm getting anxious. Like a 10-year-old would be able to say to their parents that, oh, I'm anxious, or I'm down today, or I'm depressed, or I'm not feeling good. The other day, somebody from Instagram, there was a group of like 14, 15-year-old, they asked me to make a video on anxiety that they could share with their peers. Okay, a 2-minute
That's amazing.
video.
I love that. I love that they have a vocabulary for this also, because I think it's really important that the thing you brought up is that they're able to articulate themselves, because I think that when we were growing up, it's not like we didn't feel these feelings. It's just that we didn't know how to describe them. And, and Faizan, can you hear me? Because, you've been quietly waiting for your turn. And this is something that I want to ask you as a man and also as a father. Like, do you feel that growing up maybe like our generation, because we are peers and we're in our 30s, do you feel like this was particularly difficult as a boy also? Sort of not having this vocabulary to talk about how you're feeling and find a way to kind of communicate, because that's what communication is really. It's about having the language to be able to say that this is making me uncomfortable, or I don't like this, or I want this to stop. And a lot of times we're just kind of silent because we didn't know how to say it.
Yeah. I think I would say that gender perhaps is a little less important in that, because I don't think that my cousins, female cousins, for example, from the same generation also had the vocabulary.
Right.
What I think is our generation and the parenting we are doing, I think it's a mass experiment of parenting, because we are really the first generation that is raising humans who are digital natives.
Yes, absolutely.
Which, so we just spoke about the fact that every 10 years there's a new research.
Yeah.
But at the time of our parents, new researches would come every 20 years, 25 years. So there were things which were established facts. Whereas for us, we have new information every couple of years. Small things like screen time, language to use with the kid, when should they have a phone, so you have new information.
Yeah.
So for me, the most important aspect of this is to be very consciously aware of the fact that you must be open to learning new things as a parent. Because our parents got one set of information when they were 20, which was then true till they were 40 or 45.
Yeah, and still might be true even now with us. It's still true.
Absolutely. But for me, when Minha was born, just 10 years ago, things that I know now are very different. So if I was fixed in the mindset of 2011, because that's what I learned as a parent then I'm stuck. Then I'm raising a kid 10 years in the past, right?
Yes.
So I think to be open to accepting the fact that you will be wrong as a parent, and as soon as you learn something new, pivot and make a change.
Yes, absolutely. I think that willingness to be wrong is at the heart of all of this. We're going to take a very quick at this juncture, and we'll be back in a flash with this wonderful conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back to the coffee table, where we are having a fascinating conversation about positive parenting and being an adaptive parent with positive parenting advocates and mom and dad to two wonderful little girls, Mavish and Faizan Ahmed, and Mariam Sohail, who is a marriage and family therapist based here in Lahore. Now, before the break, Faizan, we were talking about how again, because we are parents for raising kids in a very particular environment. And again, we are caregivers to children, to sort of put it in a more egalitarian way, because a lot of people watching, I'm sure, interact with a lot of kids, but are not necessarily their parents. So one really important aspect about positive parenting as like a parenting philosophy is also that it is authoritative, but it's not authoritarian, which means that as a parent, you are open and you're responsive and you have a clear set of rules, but you are open to being wrong, and you're open to communication, and you want to kind of understand, and you are open to be adaptive, as opposed to being authoritarian, which means that it's like my way or the highway. And do you feel like as a father, often the way that we approach sort of, parent roles is also that, good cop, bad cop? And do you feel like a lot of times fathers get pushed into being authoritarian, possibly even against their own sort of nature, to want to do it?
Yeah, definitely. I think fathers are pushed into that role because of the dynamics in the house. Because by the time the dad is coming back home in a traditional setup, and the mom is fed up, so, even if this dad does not want to be the bad cop, but, at 7 o'clock, you just have to just play that role. However, I think COVID has changed things a lot, because the amount of involvement that both parents can now have over the last 18 months with the kids has increased. So I think it has given us an opportunity to balance out this bad cop, good cop ratio. And also the amount of time we've spent with the kids. To give you a small example, I was talking about screen time. Previously, I was more authoritarian. That, you know what, 2.5 hours or it's 2 hours, or because that's what the latest research tells me. But then recently I had a conversation with my older one and I said, listen, why don't you go and do some research on screen time for a 10-year-old? Come back and let's have a conversation. The fact that I was at home for so long or long durations of time gave me the opportunity to play a slightly different role. So if we can take some positive out of this fact that we have been able to spend this time with our kids and step out of a traditional father role or a traditional mother role and just parent and caregiver and have a conversation.
No, I think that's a really great way of modeling certain behaviors also. And Mariam, if you could at this point kind of tell us a little bit about what does it mean to model behaviors for your child or the children around you, and how can one do that with that positive approach?
Yeah, so for example, if you're asking your child to be kind, right, to other kids or to his or her siblings, then you need to model what kindness is, because otherwise it's just a word for them, right? It's just a word that they're adding to their vocabulary that earns them good points, right? They don't actually know what it means. So I think it's really important for you to model that, look, right now, for example, the house help did something and I did not scold her. I spoke to her politely, look how I'm handling the situation right now, or even towards the child that, look, you did something that you were not supposed to do. You broke a boundary here. But look, I'm trying to handle this calmly so that I don't hurt you in the process. Right? So you're giving kindness and then labeling it that, okay, this is what it is. It enables them to then show it to other people.
So that's really important, because I feel like a lot of times, again, and this sort of goes into the authoritarian kind of aspect of parenting, is that you give an order and you expect obedience. But if you don't model that behavior yourself, the child doesn't know how to do it either.
Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, speaking of that kind of authoritarian and authoritative debate, I think the flip side is also important to understand. Like authoritarian, or when you're trying to be collaborative with the child, sometimes you take it too far. You take it too far.
And how does one do that?
Hierarchy that needs to exist. A parental hierarchy that needs to exist for the safety and development of the child is not established. So a lot of parents that I see in my practice are actually not struggling with this kind of rigidity. They're struggling with the opposite of rigidity. That they did not set those boundaries, did not create that hierarchy, and sometimes the hierarchy is flipped. That means that the child is on top of the parent. The child is the parent.
They're in the driver. But Mariam, how does that happen? Does that happen when you're too lenient, or a child doesn't have a sense of rules? Like, what happens? Like, how does that situation come about?
Mostly it happens because you're chaotic and you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, right? You're just rewarding or being lenient or asking or giving the child what they're asking every time without knowing why you're doing that. It's at your own whim. That you feel that way, you feel like that, just you want to be hands off, or for any reason. You're not clear why you're agreeing to the child, right? Why you're agreeing to the demand, and you just do it. And then over time, that pattern just kind of, becomes cemented. And also a lot of times, that kids could be quite manipulative. So they start to learn that this is something we can get away with, right? If we throw a tantrum, our parents can really...
we'll scare them into doing what we want.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then it's clearly not in a child's interest to be like, the fun parent. Like children need to have a structure in order to feel safe. And for that, you need to have rules and you need to have people saying that, no, this is what you're allowed, this is what you're not allowed. And there's no sort of conversation between those things, at least.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And I practiced in the US for the first 2 years of my practice, and then I was working here. So I think that dichotomy between like desi parenting versus what is happening in the West, it's not like black and white.
No.
So there's so many elements that we are doing right, and there's so many elements that are missing over there in their parenting.
Yeah.
And it takes like 10 to 15 years of showing results. So there's this theory today that we have to be like collaborative with our kids. It'll take 15 years to show you that it worked or not.
Oh man, that's a long to wait. Fingers crossed, and I hope I'm doing the right thing. But Mavish, when it comes to positive parenting and this sense that you can have a mutually respectful relationship with your child, do you feel like our own family structures often kind of interfere with this also, and that women are challenged by this? Like for example, while Mariam was speaking, I was thinking about how, like for example, we have families and our kids interact a lot with their grandparents and their aunts and their uncles and all of that. And often what happens is that, the parents, the mom and the dad might have rules, but then when you go to your grandmother's house, all those rules fly out of the window. And people are kind of undermining your parenting then. So then how do you keep things consistent, and how do you sort of keep your own sort of sense of structure intact?
Yes, I think that happens a lot. I miss the fact a lot that I'm not in the same city with my parents. I've never been in the same city after marriage.
Yeah.
So I really miss that. But I've been a parent for 10 years, and over these 10 years, there have been multiple occasions where I've actually felt lucky that that distance allowed me to, parent my kids my way. Yeah. Because, we were for 2 years and Minha was 4 at that time, and it used to be very difficult for me because it was important for me that he has a sleep schedule so that I can have my work timings, I can have my time with my husband. Yes. So it was important for us as a sleeping schedule. Yeah. It was important for us both as her meal and then she gets her treat. Yeah. Minha was weak and so many things that it was a huge cause of anxiety for me that she doesn't eat properly. Yeah. So if we would walk into when we would walk into a grandparent's house, the house help is bringing one candy because obviously they love Minha a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. And everyone's doing it out of a sense of love, but it's eventually not good for the child. And then you're just sort of all your good work has been undone.
Right. So, every time she would go say salam to one individual, she would get a candy. And then when it was dinner time, she would be.
Yeah.
So that is really something that used to bother me. And then I think a lot of times when you're trying to establish a sleeping schedule, many people also say, okay, what's the big deal? Be a little flexible. It's okay if you put her out at 10 o'clock in the night. Yeah. But then you have to understand that the parent has to have long-term consequences.
Yeah. And it's not okay. Actually, one thing I'm also really intrigued by and very impressed by is that you have a very feisty younger daughter, and she is wonderful and she has such a big personality, and you have always come across on the blog and you've always really openly talked about how she is a handful. So how have you as a parent taken a conscious positive parenting approach to discipline and managing big feelings in children? Because I think that this is also one thing that as parents we think about, that, if you're taking a gentle parenting or a positive parenting approach, will that mean that the children will just be
Yeah. But you know what? I love her personality. I was not that person, and my older one is not that person, which is why I felt that for so many years I was taken for a ride by so many people. I've been bullied and I've been made to do things that I don't want to. So that factor in her, she's vocal and she knows how to say no, and she will stand up for herself. And park, she can protect herself. I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I feel that, with everything that is happening to women around the world, the injustices that women have to suffer from, and then not even know this is happening, something negative is happening to you. I want to encourage, that part of her personality, that yes, Bano, if you can protect yourself, go for it.
Yeah.
So in doing so, only 4, but we do have conversations about being kind as well, sharing as well. Some other kids fall on the swing, Bano, then, it's not fair that you grab the swing and take it.
Yeah.
I think there's a balance. And I think me and Faizan both try to be very conscious of it, that her personality should not be suppressed. She's feisty and she should be.
Yes.
But the conversation, whatever level, if she's 4, then the conversation has to be at that level. And if she's 10, inshallah, then the conversation has to be at that level.
Absolutely.
But we have to keep reminding you how to be kind and give space to others and,
Yeah, and I think that is really important that you brought how, and this is one really important thing about positive parenting also, is that you have to manage your response and your conversations according to your child's development stage and where they're at cognitively also, because you can't sort of expect them to do things that they're just not at the moment developed enough to do. And that's a completely fair thing. And I think a lot of times our expectations aren't commensurate with their capabilities, and then obviously there's a gap there, and it's frustrating for parent and child. Mariam, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on what Mehwish was saying. I think it's really commendable how, as a parent, she's learning from the kid, right? And, theory is going to change, feedback is going to take time, but immediate feedback is going to come from your kid. So I think it's really important to be attuned to your child and know what is going to work for them, right?
Yes.
And what is part of their personality that you cannot crush. If she was going to have the same approach with her older daughter, and be like, you need to be feisty, you need to get out in the world, and you need to learn to protect yourself.
Yes.
That's not going to work for the other, right? So I think that kind of learning is really important for a parent, but to be open to that kind of learning is really important for a parent. Yeah. And I think good job, Mehwish. That's very good learning that you've done.
That's fantastic. Hey, you're going to stamp for approval from our favorite therapist. So, Mariam, in your opinion, what makes a healthy parent-child relationship? How do you know that this is healthy behavior?
I think attunement, right? Attunement means that you are actually really paying attention to the child, keeping your own biases and your own understanding of how it should be aside.
Right.
And really trying to see what is this little human being like. So that kind of interest, like really genuine interest in somebody, is really important to cultivate that healthy relationship, to open some space for that healthy relationship. Because I can't tell you how many times we as human beings are not feeling seen. And how many times our kids are not feeling seen, right? Because we are coming in with whatever we believe and about how it should be and how my child is and what they're capable of, what they're not capable of.
And what I would like them to be.
To be, that kind of superimposes on the child itself.
Yes.
So they start to feel unseen. And that's the basis of ruining a relationship, setting a tone for a bad parental relationship, right? Where your child is feeling unseen.
Yeah. And I suppose in order to be properly attuned to your child, you really have to know them. And the only way you can know them is if you spend time with them. And Faizan, do you feel like often, again, we're sort of coming back to the fact, that a lot of men don't participate in child rearing. And again, this is not just, here in Pakistan, but all over the world. These are issues that a lot of families have. And that sort of dads whether they want to, or some dads aren't very interested, they get excluded from that relationship with their child because, it's a combination, I'm sure, of just sort of it just happens, nobody intends for it to happen, and also do you think that a lot of dads just feel uncomfortable being in a space which traditionally everybody insists is for women only, and you know how it is, especially here when dads are more involved, then it's either you get like a gold star for it all the time for the bare minimum, or people are just like, that's not your job. Like your own family will say things like that.
No, absolutely. I think dads, I personally think a lot of Desi dads are actually secretly happy with this nice gender division in the house.
Yes, which is why it keeps happening. Yeah.
I don't touch diaper.
Yeah.
But even dads who want to be active parents are then not given that opportunity because of, the way culture works, the way, as you said, family members would say things, friends would say things. The number of times I've heard in sort of underhanded words, even from my friends, that, why do you, tumhe kyun karna hai aise,
Yeah.
So just these comments, and then you have to, I think fathers need to overcompensate. They definitely need to overcompensate if they want to become equal parents.
Yes.
It will take time, but as of today, they need to overcompensate. And Mariam said this thing about instant feedback, and it resonates with me so much because I'm always very anxious about my parenting style. And this one day I had a big fight with Minha and I dropped her to school. Yeah. And when I went to pick her up, she basically ran to me and said that, Baba, can we not talk about the fight because I really need you right now? Something bad happened. Which was instant feedback for me that perhaps some level of communication has developed. So I'm doing something right. Yeah. So just continuing on that journey to try and overcompensate a little to break that gender barrier in the house.
Yeah, but what do you mean? What are you thinking of when you say overcompensate?
It's very easy and comfortable to come home, and if things are already done, you don't really have to. Yeah. So when you come home, you have to make that extra. That fine, your wife knows where the clothes are.
Yeah.
But can you also go and open the cupboard and do we have the right shorts for tomorrow or not?
Yeah.
Minna, do you have the sports wear tomorrow? What bag do you want? What kind of lunch do you want? Because these things are, if you're in a comfort zone, if you have a partner at home, they will do it.
Yes.
So when you are spending time with your child, you have to overcompensate a little. Even if things are getting done, you have to involve yourself a little more than what might be required in that moment. Yeah. And only then you will eventually become an equal parent.
Absolutely. Like you have to basically go that little extra mile in order to make that connection with your child. And Mavish, I'm sure you'll agree that when one's children are small, the only way to kind of make that connection is by doing all these sort of small, everyday, almost menial tasks that children require, like putting, knowing where their clothes are, or knowing what they like to eat, or, giving them a bath, because those are ways that you are connecting with your child, because it's a long time till they reach that stage where you can sit down and have like a one-on-one conversation in a meaningful way with them. But until that point, these are the things that you need to do.
Yeah. So when they are small, how do you tell them that I am there for you and I am there for whatever you need? These little things, So you can't wait for them to be 15. Then I'll have a conversation when you're old. And I think Faizan has taught me so much because I have obviously grown up in this society, in this culture, where I also learn. I'm the primary caregiver. I need to know what they need for the approaching winter. I need to know what.
Exactly, like it's the mom's job,
It's a job, but he constantly comes in and he takes over roles from me. Itna ke now lunch is his duty. I don't even know what he's given to the kids. He lunch boxes. I would like to say that kudos to him for coming in and taking those roles away from me and doing them. And kids are like, Baba will cook tonight or Mama will cook tonight. It's the same thing because they know both can cook, both can bathe us, both can change our shorts, both can change our diapers. And I really love that dynamic. dynamic where my girls don't feel that this is for men and this is for women.
Absolutely. And sort of coming back to modeling that Mariam was talking to us about also is that you are showing your children that this is possible, and this is in fact a happy, easy, natural thing to do, that your father can give you lunch and your mom can drop you to school, and anything is possible really. And it's just so lovely, and it's so wonderful to see that, you know, these things do happen. It's not as I think unique or shockingly special as it might have been for our parents' generation for this kind of parenting approach to adopt. And thank you so much, Mavish and Faizan and Mariam, for being with me today on the show on this wonderful conversation where it is just, I feel really lucky to be part of an era where these kind of conversations are happening. And whether you are a parent, whether you help with any kid in your house, you interact with them, you're a caregiver, you're a teacher, you know, we all interact with children in so many ways. And I think that the things that we talked about today have been so edifying and so helpful. And I think particularly also about being aware of why you respond the way that you do to the children around you, and sort of a great deal of self-reflection helps us be better people to the young people around us. And if we want to set a better example for them, then that starts with being better people ourselves and doing better ourselves, and everybody benefits. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow our wonderful guests for more wisdom and insights and wonderful information. And we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye.